No interrupting. Hi, Amy. I'm going to give us a few more minutes, but go ahead and get comfortable and get logged on. We'll see who else joins in the last few minutes here before we get started. Is in like 1 minute. Oh, that's right now. All right. Welcome to Stress, Hormones, and Your Thyroid. I'm Dr. Alex Ridley. I'll introduce myself a little bit more as we get going here. But I thought we would, this is not a what do you want to call it, a travel seminar. However, I thought we'd break the ice just by sharing, if you guys want to, in the chat, or you can come out and actually say, if the world wasn't the way it was right now, what is your dream vacation destination? And so this is mine. This is Kefalonia, Greece, Kefalonia Island. And I just happened to find it on someone's Instagram and I was like, oh, I need to go there someday. So that is on my bucket list. And I would love to know what's on your bucket list for travel when we can actually get to that again. And as you're typing that in the chat, I will go ahead and get started. So welcome. Thank you to those who are here live. I know it can take something to take time out of your evening and your life to work on your health. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So I'm excited that you're here. Medellin, Colombia. I'm going to have to look that up, Amy, because that sounds really cool. I just before the whole world went crazy earlier this year, I made it to Mexico for the first time. And I was really intrigued by the whole going to South America in a way that I never have been before. Not that Mexico is really South America, but very cool. I'll have to check that out. All right, so let's dive into this. If I can get my controllers to work. Perhaps, there we go. So stress, hormones, and your thyroid. Like I said, my name is Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley. Technically, I sometimes just cut out the Swenson. And I am in women's integrative and natural alternative medicine practitioner, and also an integrative women's health coach. And so we are going to dive into a few things tonight. But before we do, and we've got somebody else joining. This is going to get interesting doing this way. All right. And if you're just joining us, we kick things off by sharing what our dream destination vacation is for when we can travel again. All right. So, as best you can, we live in a crazy, chaotic world. I have a 7-year-old who my husband's not here, so he's under very strict orders not to interrupt us tonight, but do your best to eliminate distractions and really engage and focus, because quite frankly, this conversation has the potential to truly change your life and make a really big difference. And I'm really excited to engage in that with you. So do your best to give me your undivided attention as much as you can. And what we're going to cover today is there's essentially 3 things. We're going to talk about our healthcare crisis, and not even just the COVID-19 stuff. Then we're going to get into like the real underlying cause of thyroid dysfunction for women, and how to actually be proactive with your health and your thyroid to heal without needing medication, because that's what I'm all about. When you stay until the end, there's a couple of bonuses I'll share here in a second, but when you stay until the end, there will be an opportunity to actually schedule a no strings attached call with me where we, meet one-to-one and really just dive into what's going on with your health, with your thyroid, with your hormones, and really help you come up with a plan going forward. So that's coming up. You want to stick around. And if you make it to the end, I will actually send you an essential oil to help support your thyroid, as well as I have a guide that I call the 5 simple steps to beat your overwhelm, because I know we all could use that. So stick through to the end, and those are things that you can get access to. Let's jump into this. So our healthcare crisis. If I were to ask you, do we have a healthcare crisis in our country? What would you say? You can just type this into the chat. I'm drinking tea because I've been dealing with a little bit of bronchitis this week. Amy says obesity. Yes, that is definitely a big part of it. So we've got kind of two facets of this. There's our lifestyle, and we're going to talk quite a bit about that and what it's led to, in particular for women's health. And then there's also this machine, this world that we live in, that says that take this pill and that's what you do in order to be healthy. But really, if we think about it, and we're going to talk about this more, it's really just about masking symptoms. So we are very much inundated with this world of something's wrong, we take a medication, and a lot of times we never get off the medication at the end of the day. So we're going to jump into this. What I do is completely outside the box from that, and I'm going to share a few stories of women that I've worked with over the past couple of years. But Joanne is an example of someone who got off all of her medications, lost 25 pounds, and her doctors were shocked. They actually asked what she had done. When she originally came in and started seeing me, she told me she felt like she was dying. She was on multiple medications for high blood pressure and diabetes, and her thyroid was off and all of this stuff. And now she's off all of it. She had no energy to play with her granddaughter. And now, she's out playing with her granddaughter all the time. And her doctors wanted to know what she did. And it's not, I don't want anyone to think that I'm anti-Western medicine. I'm not at all. I have plenty of friends who are Western medical doctors. It's the construct or the box of Western medicine that really, a lot of them don't know any better. They're not taught anything else except what drug to use for a certain condition. And so it really leads us down this slippery slope, especially when it comes to our thyroid, because dealing with a thyroid issue becomes all about, how much Synthroid are you going to take for the rest of your life is ultimately where we end up. So we're just going to briefly touch on this whole thing. Being COVID-19. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm kind of not tired of it, but tired of it, if you know what I mean. In any case, what did COVID-19 really reveal? The reason why it's been such a big deal in our country is that 60% or 133 million Americans actually have a chronic underlying health condition. And so that makes them more susceptible to getting coronavirus or contracting COVID-19, as a lot of this research has shown. And 90% of that is actually related to lifestyle. Amy mentioned obesity in here. And so what that's led to is that we have unacceptable costs and unacceptable outcomes in terms of how we approach health. We spend $3.5 trillion a year. I'll say that again, $3.5 trillion a year on our healthcare. And yet we're ranked 37th out of 40 in terms of health outcomes in Westernized nations. And so there's this huge disparity in how much money we spend and how healthy we actually are. And a big part of the reason is because 90% of that spending is on chronic health conditions, which thyroid falls under. And those aren't treatable with medication. They're treatable with lifestyle alteration and with getting to the root of why you developed this condition in the first place. So that's really what we're going to get into. And, the other piece of this is, it's not that, we're just taught, I have this symptom, so I go take this pill. And it's not that there's a time and a place for that. And Western medicine is very good at emergency medicine, which is what we've seen, the need for a lot with coronavirus, with, if you're bleeding on the side of the road after an accident, we have an incredible emergency system. It's just what happens after that. And so that's where, we have these big pharmaceutical industries and people looking to make a lot of money, especially talking about coronavirus and a vaccine and all of this stuff, that are, pushing this one way of dealing with our health that really leaves us sicker and not getting the results and not actually able to heal or move forward. So before we dive into this, I just want to share with you a little bit of my story. This is the reason that I do these things and show up and teach and work with women in the way that I do. And so I 4 years ago, that's when this picture was taken, I was a hot mess. I was coming out of a divorce, a really rough 3-year marriage, coming out of a divorce. I was a single mom. That's my son's now 7. He was 3 in that picture. I had put on a bunch of weight. I couldn't figure out how to get it off. I had no energy whatsoever. My hair was falling out. I was just exhausted all the time. I started coming home from work. My original hat was actually as a chiropractor, and I would come home from a day at the office and not be able to talk because I was just hoarse. And what had happened is my hormones were completely out of whack, and it was due to long-term stress. I'd been in an emotionally abusive marriage to somebody who struggled with alcoholism and just a lot of negative stuff for a lot of years. And when I finally got out of that, my body completely crashed. And so I really launched onto this journey of, okay, how do I figure this out? Because I'm not about to go take medication for the anxiety I developed or that my thyroid was a mess. I wanted to heal naturally. And I knew a lot of stuff already, but I went further on and started learning more and more and more. And over the last 2 years, my thyroid has normalized, and we're going to talk about what normal actually means. I've been able to lose weight again. My energy's come up, and I'm actually now very happily remarried and, have not one, but 4 sons, and then a husband who I count as a fifth male living in my house. And, so I share, and what we're going to talk about tonight is the process that I went through and that I've taken other women through now to really be able to actually heal on your own and not have to stay tied to this crazy monstrosity that's called healthcare that we have right now that really has nothing to do with health. It's disease management at the best. So hopefully that makes sense. I like to talk about this to start out, just to set the stage for where I'm really coming from. Because ultimately, we do have control right now. We can't stop aging, but we can be proactive. You can get the right information, which is a lot of, what we're doing here on this webinar. You can eliminate risk factors, find the underlying cause, which we're really going to get into tonight, and then boost your immune system, minimize inflammation and stress, calm autoimmunity, balance hormones, and ultimately take action. So each and every one of you that showed up tonight are taking an action, which again, I just want to acknowledge you for. It's a big deal. So what are we really missing? And I'm going to talk, I know this looks like a lot of stuff here. Let me pull out the chat so I can see it. There we go. All right. So when you look at, we've established this approach to health that is Western healthcare. We're going to talk about it a little more in a moment. That basically says something hurts, give me a pill or give me a surgery, and that's that, right? And generally, it doesn't really solve any of the problem. So what I'm talking about are what I call the missing pieces, and this is actually the foundation of my health rejuvenation program. So it's based on 3 pillars, which are to shift, stabilize, and sustain. And so we have to shift how we're approaching everything. And I'm going to talk about all this in more detail as we go through this. We have to stabilize, which is get the body stable and get us stable in that new way of being and approaching the world. And then it needs to be sustainable. I talk to so many women that we try things. We try the diet, we try the exercise program, we try the supplement, we try the thing, but it's not sustainable long-term. And so eventually we fall right back into doing what we were trying to do before. And so inside of that, there are 9 steps, and we're not going to touch on all of these tonight because that would take like a year. But, we're going to talk about some of the first 3, which are to refocus, which is refocusing on us, revamping how we approach ourselves, our schedule, our days, all of that, and then renewing our gut and our body through nutritional changes. So we're going to kind of focus on the top of this curve here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that's where we're heading tonight. And so just a reminder, I know we had 1 or 2 people join a little late. We just talked about our healthcare crisis. We're going to get now into the underlying cause of thyroid dysfunction for women and how to be proactive with your health and your thyroid so that you can heal naturally and not have to rely on medications or, just resign yourself to a life of not feeling well. And once again, there's those bonuses if you stick with me through the end or till the end. All right. So just a little more, I've alluded to this, but generally, like, something doesn't feel good. We're tired. Maybe you're having a hard time losing weight And if you guys, as I'm talking through this, just want to pop in the chat and, just let me know what is the big thing that you were hoping to get out of this evening, or what do you feel like you need the most help with when it comes to your thyroid or hormones or stress or all of the above. But our Western medical approach is, first we say, okay, what condition do you have? What diagnosis can we put on you? And then what drugs do you need? This just happened to me because I've been feeling under the weather. I went and got a COVID test earlier this week just to, be safe. And they immediately were like, well, we want to put you on like 3 different antibiotics for a bacterial infection I may or may not actually have. And I was like, okay, no thanks. So I did my thing. But that's just the cycle that we're on. And so when it comes to our thyroid, to diabetes, to an autoimmune condition, which there are thyroid autoimmune diseases, they're actually autoimmune diseases that affect the thyroid, but not actually a thyroid disease. We'll talk about those in a minute. Hormone imbalances, those just mean that you're going to be on meds for the rest of your life because there's not any work done to really figure out where the issue has come from. And it's kind of like, if you think about your car, if your check engine light comes on and you take it to the mechanic, you want them to go in and find out what the problem actually is, right? And then fix it. And the way we approach Western, our health in terms of what we do in America in particular, but also North America, I would say, is, we're basically going into the doctor and asking them to cut the wire that's telling us that something's wrong because we don't want to feel the symptom anymore. And that's essentially what we're doing. And we're not actually getting to the root cause. So I think I've hit that hammer over the head enough. But one other thing I just want to mention is that, the whole system is constructed just to really be disease management. And most private insurance companies follow what Medicare does. And in Medicare's guidelines, they actually say care that seeks to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance the quality of life is not considered medically necessary. And my son just lost $10. And women in the side of all of this, so 1 in 5 women have a thyroid disorder or will develop one over the course of their life. 41% of women are overweight or obese. 1 in 4 have heart disease. 1 in 4 are on medication for depression. And 78.8% of the 25 million Americans with autoimmune conditions are women. And what that means is that as women, we are chronically overwhelmed, burnt out, and exhausted, and it leads to a lot of problems down the road, even if you're not necessarily having a lot of symptoms already. So my big question for you is, are you willing to do something different? And go ahead and just type in the chat, which I seem to not be able to see anymore. So I'll keep going, but let me know. Are you willing to do something different? And another story I want to share is Cindy's story. So Cindy came to see me and she had been struggling with PCOS for about 20 years. She had been able to have kids, but had had a lot of trouble and was just feeling awful. She was exhausted, she had no energy, her thyroid was off. She was wary of anything, but knew she needed to do something different. And so we started working together. Again, we worked together for about 3 months, and she had a lot more energy. She started actually exercising some. She lost well over 20 pounds. I think she's still going. She's kind of continued on her journey since we wrapped up our working together. And she started getting her cycle back for the first time in years. She wasn't sure how she felt about that, but that's the power that comes with doing something different, which is what we're going to talk about right now. And the next thing you want to ask yourself is, what's your why? Like the why I do what I do, the why my boys, who are all in this picture here, this was at Disneyland before coronavirus, they don't get why I eat the way I do, and they don't get why I'm particular about certain things. But I know for me that it makes a difference in who the mom I get to be, in the doctor I get to be for my, my clients and my patients, in the human I get to be in the world. It makes a huge difference for me because I've experienced that low and that bottom of what it was like when I wasn't particular about those things and didn't really put that first. So you really want to identify and get connected to your why, because ultimately that's the thing that pulls you through making changes and doing the hard work that isn't just taking a pill at the end of the day. All right, so we are going to jump into actually talking about the thyroid now. Let me take a sip of water here. So the thyroid in particular is responsible for quite a few things in your body. It helps with bone metabolism, your immune system. It helps with immune support. It helps your brain and nervous system. It helps with your digestive function, gastrointestinal function. It helps your liver and your gallbladder, your growth and sex hormones, which are both important in libido and also weight loss, fat loss, helps with fat burning. It helps regulate insulin and glucose metabolism, which happens in your liver. And we're going to connect those dots in just a minute. Helps your cholesterol levels stay normal and helps your body have proper stomach acid. So there's a lot that can go wrong if your thyroid's not functioning correctly. And there's also a lot that can actually cause your thyroid to malfunction. And so we're going to dive into that now. So some symptoms that go along with your thyroid being off is you're tired, you're sluggish and fatigued. You might be experiencing depression and struggling with that. If you live in Alaska, winter, and especially I have a feeling this year is going to be one of the worst in terms of that, just because of what the year that we've had. You could be having bowel difficulty, meaning that you don't have at least normal bowel movements are 2 to 3 normal, soft, well-formed, not sticky, or hard bowel movements a day. And so that means that your gastrointestinal system is functioning the way it's supposed to. You could be dealing with anxiety, nervousness, or feeling emotional all the time. Morning headaches are actually a sign that your thyroid can be off. If you have sleep disturbances or insomnia, hair loss and thinning, weight gain, your cold hands and feet, so you can never get your extremities warm. You might be experiencing mood swings and be really emotional. And so here I want to share Davia's story. She started working with me, actually not for what we ended up helping her with, but she was having a lot of gastrointestinal stuff and dealing with diastasis recti. So she's a high level athlete who could hold a plank for like 8 minutes, but she still looked like she was 3 months pregnant. And so we did a lot with nutritional changes with her. And what she actually shared with me at the end of it was that her mood had stabilized in a big way. She would flip on her kids and on her husband just like that, and she wouldn't be able to actually de-escalate, and they didn't understand exactly what was happening. And so that completely balanced out, and her communication with her husband and her relationship with him got a lot better. And with her kids, they started to know her as nice mommy, which is a big deal for a lot of women I know. And then the last symptom that we can deal with is hot flashes and night sweats. All fun things. And so the standard medical treatment, I've mentioned this several times, is generally Synthroid. It's rare that I find a woman who has reached a point where her thyroid is so off that they prescribed anything but Synthroid. And what's important to know is that's based on a 50-year-old model. It might actually be more like 60 or 70 years old at this point. And we've come a long way. There's a lot of things that we understand that to still be using the same model just doesn't make a whole lot of sense in my world. And so there's some stuff that we need to understand with how your thyroid actually functions and produces the thing it's supposed to, because there's these acronyms that everybody knows. So we're actually going to talk about what all those are right now. So your hypothalamus sends thyroid releasing hormone, which is TRH, to your pituitary gland, and that's an area in your brain. And then the pituitary gland triggers the release of thyroid stimulating hormone to actually stimulate the thyroid. And so that's when the thyroid starts to work. And then thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates thyroid peroxidase is what that is. It's an enzyme. And that creates T4 and T3. So you guys can show me by either a raise of hand or a comment, like how many of you have actually heard of all the things. Most of us have heard of TSH. If you're lucky, they've looked at T3 and T4. And we're about to talk about what's important there, but there's actually some other areas of the chain that are important to look at as well if you're having thyroid symptoms. So when your thyroid, the TPO, which is the peroxidase, the enzyme, stimulates the thyroid to release T3 and T4, 93% of it is T4 and 7% is T3. And we need both of them. So what happens is T4 goes to the liver, and then the liver actually converts 60% of that to T3. And Amy, I just saw your comment again. For some reason, I can't get my chat to move over so I can actually like fully read it, but thank you for sharing. So that's happening in your liver, and then it sends some of that 20% of that that's inactive goes to your gut, where it's then converted into T3 again. So you have free T3 floating around, you've got free T4 floating around, you've got some going to your tissues, and then you've got all this happening. But what's really interesting about this, and what nobody really talks about, is that a lot of this happens in the gut. Yes, your thyroid has to actually produce T3 and T4, but to really get T3 to where it needs to be, your gut health also has to be really, really good. And so this is where we start to miss the mark and how so many Western medical doctors manage thyroid, which is literally just to medicate it. Whereas I want to go back and say, okay, what's going on that this whole system is breaking down? The other piece about this is where stress comes into this whole thing. When we have stress, your body releases cortisol. Cortisol is down here. Cortisol inhibits the production of TSH. And so cortisol will actually shut down your thyroid, stimulating T3 and T4, and then lo and behold, we develop thyroid symptoms. So unless we're able to deal with our gut, manage stress, and really look at the whole picture, you end up on medication is basically where we're at, or you never really get there. Another fun part of this pie is lab ranges. And Amy, that this might be part of what you're referring to here. I can see something about not getting adequately treated, and I agree. So lab ranges are not really helpful when it comes to function. And the reason is that they use a bell curve. And so what that means is they take an average of what we already determined as a sick population, because 60% of our population is dealing with a chronic underlying health condition. And then they base their normals off of that. So for TSH, for example, most labs will look at anywhere from, I think more recently I've seen like 0.4 to 5.5 or something is considered normal. And so if you're not outside of either of those ends of the range, then you're normal, you're great. But you probably have symptoms, because just to function normally, TSH needs to be between 1.8 and 3.0. And I find most women feel the best if it's somewhere between 2.0 and 2.5. And that's not even looking at, our T3 and our T4 and our TPO, and just making sure all the pieces of the pie and our cortisol and what's going on with gut health and all of those things. So, for some of you that might bring some clarity to, if you've been told that you're normal and you still feel terrible, that would be why. So we have to have proper testing, and we have to really get to the root of what is the underlying thing. Is it truly just hypothyroidism, that your thyroid's not active enough and producing enough? Is it actually because you have prediabetes or diabetes, and so your liver is overtaxed and it's not doing its job in converting T3 and T4? Is it adrenal stress? Is it hormone imbalance from stress is generally where that comes from, and cortisol shutting down the pathways? Is it toxicities? Is it a gastrointestinal disorder or autoimmune? And then on the other side of that, you have all the thyroid stuff. So, we have primary hypothyroidism, we have secondary to hypopituitaryism. So you can have an issue at the pituitary level. You can have thyroid not getting converted enough or getting overconverted. You can have all kinds of things, thyroid resistance, autoimmune disease, and we're going to talk about those in just a second. Like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease are the two that affect the thyroid, but they're not actually a problem with the thyroid specifically. And I'm about to explain what that means, I think. Yes. So 90% of thyroid symptoms among US women are actually due to an autoimmune disorder. But Hashimoto's and Graves are not thyroid specific problems. In both of them, there are other organs that are being attacked. I think I took that out somewhere. So, your thyroid is affected by them, but they're not a part of them. It's not specific to it, is what I'm trying to say. And so in order, autoimmune means that our immune system gets out of balance. And so our body starts attacking itself, and it'll attack the thyroid or the pancreas or the gallbladder or different areas of the body, the large intestine. And so we have these two types of responses. Th1 is your pro-inflammatory response. Th2 is your anti-inflammatory response. And they have to stay in balance in order for your immune system to function normally. When they get out of balance, and generally what happens is our anti-inflammatory response goes too high, because we have too much in our world that causes that in our body. And so we start to develop symptoms and autoimmune disease and all of this stuff. And it leads us to a hot mess. On top of that, 80% of our immune system is actually housed in the gut and is very dependent on the types of bacteria and the microflora that we have in our gut. And so when we experience stress, when we are dealing with anything in 2020, when all of that is happening, it's directly, your emotions actually dictate what kind of bacteria your body has in its gut. It actually affects the microbiome that you have present in your gut and can then affect your immune system. So this is all stuff to just keep in mind. Here's where I put that. So 50 to 60% of Hashimoto's have other organs being affected. You know, it can be a lot of the things that we already talked about: your spine, your brain, your myelin sheath, which is multiple sclerosis, your pancreas, your joints, having RA, all of that stuff. It's not just about your thyroid and that sense. So let me take a quick drink here. I had some weakness in my stress management, and so I am expressing the results of that here with a little bit of bronchitis. But so what do you do about this? How do we take a different approach and really take control? And you know, it comes down to what we've already talked about in a lot of ways. You know, we have to be proactive. We have to start to understand some of this stuff. We have to consider food medicine to heal the body, address blood sugar imbalances, improve our heart health. I've already been through a lot of these, boost our immune system. And you should now have like a sense of how all these pieces matter, especially when it comes to hormone imbalance and your thyroid and all of this. You know, boosting the immune system is about gut health, minimizing inflammation, calming autoimmunity, and balancing your hormones. So these are all the pieces that we really have to put together. And as I talked about earlier, you know, it becomes about more. Like when I used to do these talks, and I some of the things I miss about doing these in person is just the ability to connect and kind of like get into all the stuff. But you know, when I've done these talks in the past, I used to talk about 6 pillars of health, and so they were things like nutrition and sleep and exercise and all of that stuff. And this is still in here. So you know, of my 9 steps in the shift, stabilize, and sustain process, we refocus on you. We deal with, you know, revamping your life so that you have more time available in it to focus on you, to be able to do some of these things and then start to stabilize and sustain. We renew the body through nutritional changes. We recharge with sleep. We relax and really bring in meditation and stress relieving activities, yoga, walks, times to de-escalate. We re-energize with exercise. That's something I didn't touch on as much here, but I think we will in a minute, actually, with another story I'm going to share. So I'll just keep going. We reconnect with where our truth comes from. This is a big thing. You know, we've touched on how important emotions are in healing. And so this is the part of the sustain. There's work that we have to do to really get us to a place where life is sustainable. You know, we can't control the stuff going on outside of us. Like in my own story with having an ex-husband who, you know, was really emotionally abusive, I had to get out of that relationship. But then there was a lot of release and repair with that relationship, with my relationship with myself, with my relationship with God, where I get my truth from, and a lot of that. And, you know, ultimately our goal is to get to a place of repose where your body is functioning. Repose means peaceful tranquility. It's my favorite word ever. But, you know, where your body's functioning well, where your life is organized in a way that isn't causing extra stress. And, you know, there's always going to be stuff, but you have everything around you in the way that you want it to be, and both internally and externally, and you start to heal and start to have your symptoms decrease. We are going to talk about exercise. So I have a couple more stories I want to share with you, and then we'll kind of wrap this all together. Dana came to see me, and she was, well, she's not a was, but she's one of those moms who, she's a mom, she's a woman, she's a fitness instructor and a dance instructor, and she was exhausted. She did not feel good. She could not lose weight. She had no sex drive. Her relationship with her husband was struggling because of it. And she counted all her macros and knew exactly what she was supposed to eat, her micros and macros, you know, protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and like knew all that to a T. And she worked out 5 days a week. And she just knew something was wrong. So we started working together. And for her, the big thing actually came down to two things. So number one, her adrenals were shot. So she'd had really high stress, and her stress had come from something she didn't realize was stressing her out. Her youngest daughter had autism, and most of Dana's, time outside of working was dealing with, arguing with doctors and schools and teachers, and really working hard to make sure her daughter had the best quality of life that she possibly could. And then she would go run. And so running is one of those things, we all think that cardio is good for us and that we're losing weight and we're running because it's helping us be fit and all this stuff. And well, that's all well and good. What it actually triggers in our body is a stress response, because way back in the day, the only reason we ran was if the bear was trying to kill us and eat us, or we were trying to kill the bear and have, food for our family. And so that actually triggers a stress response in the body. And so we had her stop running, and she really took on making time for herself. And she sent me a text one day and said, my daughter just asked me what I was doing. And when I told her I was relaxing, she literally just sat down on the couch to relax. She looked at me like I had three heads, because she'd never seen me do that. And so, through all that, her libido's come up. She started losing weight again. She started enjoying life again. She has more energy when she's teaching, and she's really just been able to heal. And so, she had a lot of hormonal imbalance, including thyroid, that was able to, she was really able to shift a lot of that through healing her gut and doing a lot of things that we've been talking about. Amy, it looks like a kid maybe got a hold of your phone. And then Kanita is the last story I want to tell you about. And so, she started working with me kind of at the beginning of lockdown and all the fun that we've been through this year. And in the midst of all that, this picture on the left here is when she put on her watch for the first time in quite a few weeks after we'd started doing some anti-inflammatory stuff. That's okay, Amy. My 7-year-old interrupted to tell me he was going to the bathroom, so it's all good. I understand. 14-month-old. That's cute. I like it. All right. So, she sent me this picture, and she had to remove 4 links out of her watch because her inflammation had come down so much. Her energy increased. She no longer had that like mid-afternoon crash. And her husband had told me flat out, which I was like, whoa, dude, but that he wasn't really attracted to her anymore. And so, the attraction was renewed in their marriage. And this was all in the midst of, March and April of this year. And so it was really just fun and amazing to see what comes out of really taking care of yourself. So the last piece of this pie, we have our 3 pillars: shift, stabilize, sustain, and the 9 steps that go into getting there. And that's great. But for a lot of us, if you were to think about learning how to fly a plane, that's why there's pilots up here. And plus, I just want to be able to travel somewhere. But, you probably wouldn't, you take a class, right? And you might like buy a book. But even more than that, the first time you go up in that plane, you're going to have somebody with you showing you the ropes and, making sure that you know what you're doing, right? Because this is kind of a big deal. And I really look at health and, my role in what I do with the people that I work with and how I help them is as a partnership. And so in a mentor, like, I'm here to coach, to help you move through that process, to really actually get through to the part where you can sustain and where you start to see real healing and things start to shift and change. And so that is a huge piece that is missing in Western medicine, I would say. And that has been, key in my own journey and in the journey of other women that I've been able to work with, is just being able to come in a partnership with them. And so, we're talking about treating the whole person. Like, these steps, we go through all the pieces of the pie. We're dealing with relationships and emotional healing and nutrition and sleep and exercise. It's all the pieces combined, and really looking at you as a whole individual, and then putting a plan in place that's going to get you through this process and get you to where you want to be. Because 94% of failure is due to not having a plan. So where that leaves us, you guys will remember about 7% of this tomorrow. If you've had babies and families and other things distracting you, it might be even less than that. If I were to show you some stuff like in person and actually physically, like show you, you'd remember about 41% of it. But it's not until you're actually involved in the process that you really start to understand. And, I love this proverb because we have to take an active role in our own health and in the process of healing to understand why we're doing something and understand it well enough that it becomes sustainable and easy to make those choices and easy to, well, sustain, not to use the same word like 15 times, but there you go. So, can you change the future of your health? Absolutely. The answer is yes. It involves some stuff. We got to order the correct tests, as we talked about tonight. You got to determine the true underlying cause. Focus on the cause and not the symptoms. We talked about this. We're not about disconnecting that emergency engine light on your car. We are about rooting out the cause and getting that sorted out. And that's not always the quick fix. That's the other thing to know. We correct the dysfunction and not just try to alter the labs with drugs. Address your body as a whole and really bring a systematic approach that includes a mentoring relationship and partnership in the process. And so here's my invitation to you. I usually actually talk about this at the beginning, but everyone laughs at this photo and it's there for comic relief. But you've invested like an hour of your time with me, and I really appreciate that. And my invitation to you is to wake up and stop procrastinating, whether that means getting your thyroid tested or doing something differently or, taking on this whole new approach. It's time to get up off the couch and put the remote down, stop binge watching Netflix. Because here's the thing, the cat has 9 lives. We've only got one. I don't know if you laughed or not, but we're just going to keep going. So as we wrap this up, I told you at the beginning there'd be an opportunity to book a one-to-one call with me. This is a no strings attached experience. When I do these talks live in person, which we haven't done like at all this year, usually the invitation is into a one-to-one consultation with me for an hour. That's $87 instead of the $287 that I normally charge, just as a, you spent this time with me and learned some stuff. So we're on the same page and understand where we're both coming from. But because of the times we're in, before we even do that, we just jump on the phone for about 15 minutes. I like to get to know what you're going through, what you've tried up to this point to really address your concerns or your health issues or thyroid, whatever it is. And then we talk about how I can help. And if it feels like a good fit, we'll talk about a plan of action and then prepare for that initial visit, which would be the $87 from there. So you just you get an extra step to get to know me, to, really get to know if we're a good fit for working together in dealing with this. And I work with women from all over Alaska, and actually all over the country. So, most of this I do virtually these days over Zoom. But to book that call, you just go to dralexridley.com/call. And I will actually type it in the chat here just to make it easy for everybody. And before we wrap up, there's 3 questions I usually get asked the most. Number 1 is, do I take insurance? Unfortunately, the answer to that is actually at this point, yes and no. It highly depends on who your insurance is through. So I don't bill any insurance directly. I have everybody pay up front. I do have some women that have submitted super bills on their own. I provide what's called a super bill that has all the codes and stuff and been able to get reimbursed. However, that is no guarantee to that and would need like research on your end to really figure out. We've just found that whole box that we talked about is just so frustrating and doesn't actually help in terms of, getting people healthy, that we aren't a part of that at this point. The second question I often get is, do you have to live in Fairbanks where I am to work with me? The answer to that is no. Like I said, I work with women from all over the state and the country at this point. And the third one is, do I work with spouses or with men? And I do at times. A lot of times I'll have couples who want to go at least part of the process together. And so, usually that's the nutritional piece, and I'll work with men in that scenario, but generally most of my work is geared at women because that's where I've really found we need the most support is with ourselves. All right. So I just want to thank you. If anyone else has any other questions, you can type it into the chat here before I'll stick around for a few minutes before I jump off. But, I want to thank you all for investing time in yourself tonight. I know it's not easy, especially right now. We've got kids at home. We've got all kinds of chaos just going on at the moment. And so, I invite you to not stop here and go ahead and take that next step and book a call and just jump on the phone with me and we'll get to know each other a little bit better one-to-one and really talk about, how we can get you feeling better, healthier, and have 2021 be like the most amazing year ever, right? So thank you all so much for your time this evening, and we will talk to you soon. And I'll hang out for just a minute to see if there's any questions. But for now, we are all done. Okay, Amy, is it possible for a thyroid burned out? So Amy, it depends on the level of burnout, but I say nothing's impossible. If you've still got your thyroid, we can recover it. So definitely, if you want to go to the link, or I can also just reach out to you afterwards. We can set up a time and chat more about that. But I do believe it is possible for it to recover. Yeah. And I think it's Ioida. I'll butcher your name, but you're welcome. And Amy, you're very welcome too. All right. Thanks, ladies. I'll go ahead and close us out for now, and I will talk to you soon. All right. You're welcome, Amy. Absolutely. All right. Good night. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.